not everyone has to go to college, and college might not be the best option on you depending on what you're trying to do. I would say whatever you can do to do the thing that you want to do is the best option. There's always something to learn. There's always something to grow. Always something new to see. People in STEM make the best entrepreneurs. Why do I say that? Because an entrepreneur is there, they see an issue, and they are able to use problem solving techniques, figure out how they can fix that issue, and basically sell it to the world.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Faronbi, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. So this whole episode, or majority of this episode, I'm going to talk about what is STEM. STEM may be a word or an acronym that you're familiar with if you're in the space. But the more I realize it, if you're not in the space, you're kind of on the fringes on it, you may not actually know what STEM is, STEM or STEAM. I may get into STEAM if there's time. But STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. And so specifically with IncrediPaul, what I've been doing with my branding and my focus is it's been pretty clear that I want to make people the most incredible versions of themselves. But at the same time, I need to be specific with that young professionals and really more to focus on people that are STEM and entrepreneurs. And you may ask, why did I choose STEM or entrepreneurs? STEM, because I am in STEM. I am the E in STEM, the engineer, and entrepreneurs. I'm also an entrepreneur. A lot of people see the stuff on the podcast side, which is that's what you can see the most of. You don't see the behind the scenes stuff of me speaking. Sometimes I'm able to get recorded and share it. Other times not. I'm trying to be more intentional about getting more pictures and videos out, especially with the virtual stuff. I can get that stuff shared out, as well as the nonprofit side. So I run a successful nonprofit, Nala STEM. We've been able to impact really thousands of students around the country, whether it's directly through our mentorship program, through different workshops we've been involved in virtually or in person over the last 4 years, coming up 4 years in October. So that's on the entrepreneurship side. And then on the young professionals, so why young professionals? Why choose these group of people that are like more so the millennial, let's say the younger millennials or Gen Z primarily? And I'll say the reason I chose them is because I see myself in them. And that let me explain that. First off, a lot of times people think I am a Generation Z or younger than I am, depending on the group I'm in. I speak at a lot of different college campuses, and people think I'm still in college. And I think that's a compliment, even though now I'm 30 years old. But I think even this range, 20 to 30, like pretty much look the same, but regardless. So one thing, definitely relate to them. The other thing I started to really I realize is that there's not always a great framework for young professionals to learn. Yes, there's professional organizations, but I think as you move out of the student life, assuming you went to college, not everyone goes to college, and I would say not everyone has to go to college, and college might not be the best option on you depending on what you're trying to do. I would say whatever you can do to do the thing that you want to do is the best option. I know I can speak from an engineering standpoint. If you want to become an engineer, the best route is to go to college. At the same time, I know people who work in engineering type of roles that don't have an engineering degree just from the years of experience and stuff that they've done. But really think about where your passions lie and think about, is someone going to be able to pay me to do this thing? If someone can pay you to do it, then it becomes a career or vocation, so to speak. If someone doesn't pay you or is not paying you, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. We still need outlets and things that we pour out. The creativity is important. More and more, I realize how important creativity is as far as just more mental capacity and overall just better well-being just when you're able to create from a place. It doesn't have to be something elaborate, and it can be, but doesn't have to be, because creativity looks different to different people. And what I may think is really easy to other people, it may be very difficult to do. So think about what creativity looks like for you. So that's really been my focus on, like I mentioned, young professionals in STEM and entrepreneurship. And so that's what I'm picturing as I go into the podcast. But as I talk more about STEM, and I realize that some people don't realize that STEM is not just for children. And so I think there's been more focus lately on STEM education for the young generation. I think Generation Alpha, probably got that wrong. But the younger generation, that younger than Generation Z, that's coming up, that's still trying to figure out, they're not in high school yet. They're middle school, elementary school, trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. And there is a significant gap we have in the STEM space, in the engineering space, sciences, that we need people to fill those gaps. So just think about all the technology we have, and the technology just continues to grow, especially with AI, artificial intelligence. It just continues to grow. So really understanding what STEM is and how it's involved in pretty much every aspect of our lives. So science, so that's one thing. It could be as simple as biology or chemistry, archaeology, so many other things, but just focusing on the science. Science, all science is, when it comes down to it, because it can get complicated. Yes, the AP physics of the world, if you're in high school, or the university's level physics, or physics 2 when it gets into electronics, those can be complicated classes. If you're a double E, you're like, that's just the foundation of everything. You love it. Which double E's are electrical engineers. And so one thing I try to be intentional about is that when you are in a space, you don't realize how many shortcuts or acronyms you use when you're talking about it. And you can often think that it's widespread, that that's what everyone says or everyone understands it if you're in that space. So I'm going to be intentional as I go through this. If there's acronyms or terms I use, that I am explaining them. And even if I explain it and you still have questions, definitely reach out. I want to make sure that it is clear and is focused. But let's say you are a young professional, and when I say young professional, I really say like 18 to 25. And it could be older than that, it can be younger than that. But really, you're in that space that you're trying to do something, and just really either start the beginnings of your career or kind of further your career. Really it's more of a maturity aspect when I say the young professional, someone that is striving to do something great, something incredible. So if you're looking at STEM, what you need to realize, and I talk to people and students in STEM all the time, is that STEM is hard. There's a reason why people stop doing STEM or they give up on STEM, because it's hard. And the thing about STEM being hard, it's not just hard for people because some people are like, oh, I wasn't that great at math or science in high school, I can't do STEM. A lot of that stuff is self-fulfilling beliefs. Henry Ford said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I feel like I've said this a ton on the podcast. So if you're new to the podcast, or you've been listening since the very beginning or listening for over the last year or so, first off, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting me in this. It's just a joy to be able to share my voice with the world, connect with people, ask questions. But the self-fulfilling belief, like think you can, you think you can't, you're right. STEM is hard, math and science can be hard. But what you need to do is, if you have some interest in it, push into it, continue to do it, ask questions, and continue to seek it out. And the thing with science as a whole, I'll come back to that. Science is just the exploration of the world, figuring out how things work, how things run. So it science gets roped into a lot of different things, but at the very basis of it, you're testing and observation, scientific method, which I won't go into. So science piece, technology piece, which I think can be lumped into science. But it's more when I think a lot of times when we say science, I think it's more the physical sciences like the biology and chemistry. And then the technology, I think it's more so like the computer science, robotics, that sort of thing. I think artificial intelligence definitely is involved or roped into all of these. But what we need to understand is that science and technology, those things are great. They can be hard, but they can also be very meaningful. And at the same time, I truly believe that people in STEM make the best entrepreneurs. Why do I say that? Because an entrepreneur is there, they see an issue, and they are able to use problem solving techniques, figure out how they can fix that issue, and basically sell it to the world. So that issue might simply be it might be a product that they're like with ChatGPT, they created this product and they said, hey, we see that there's a lot of different tasks or things that people want to do. It's taking them a long time to do it. Let's develop this artificial intelligence that's able to learn and grow and develop so that it can help people get to solutions much quicker. So I will say that there is a lot of heartburn over artificial intelligence as a whole. And I think with any major scientific or technological innovation, there's always that hesitancy. There's always this s- slippery slope, end of the world, control everything type of methodology or ideation that happens. But here's the thing when the internet was coming out, I think similar things were said. It was going to take people's jobs or people weren't going to have work. Here's the thing with artificial intelligence is that at the end of the day, the human interaction and the main thing about human is like the community and the love aspect of being with each other, being with a community. That is not something artificial intelligence can do. And maybe they can develop robots that model humans look like humans, but just at the very end, it's not going to be human because it is not mortal. It lives on forever. It's just not the same. So what we need to focus on with artificial intelligence is to use it as a tool, use it as something to make our lives easier, but don't let it just control our lives or worry about if it's going to take our jobs. I think with anything, it's smart to understand it, how it works, leverage it to your benefit. What's going to happen, I think, is already is happening. It's going to change the way we work. I truly believe that with artificial intelligence, it's really if you focus on taking the kind of the the medial tasks that we normally wants to do, it kind of takes a longer time. And even if we're able, and I'm in the US, so capitalism is great, but at the same time, capitalism has can be greedy at times. But I think with artificial intelligence, there's really no reason why we could not do a 4-day work week. We could get just as much done, if not more, in 4 days as we do in 5 days with the 4-day work week. But all of that remains to be seen. But I would say that your mindset and what you're filling your thoughts with is very critical. You can literally give yourself a heart attack or anxiety attacks by what you're thinking about. And so I would say if you have any issues there, definitely seek out professional help, whether that comes from a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever you need to do. But don't just pretend like everything is okay. So I got off on a tangent a little about technology, but technology is great. The next one, engineering, is something that I'm really passionate about because I'm in engineering. And I think it's funny if you're not in engineering, you don't realize how broad it is, which all of these are very broad as well. So I said science, like even into getting chemistry or biology, like those break down even further, biochemistry, and pretty much any subject can be broken down and broken down and broken down. And if you're in the academic space, you probably understand this. As far as getting a PhD, it is a very specific thing that you're trying to solve and do that's never been done before. And so things can go deeper and deeper and deeper. So as you hear different things or are around different things, I think it's really important that we don't just brush it off and say like, "Oh, I've heard that before. I've seen that before." I know Chris Robertson was on the podcast earlier this year, and he shared about the one of the things that you don't want to say is, "I've heard that before." Because when you say that, you're automatically shutting down and taking away any possible learning that you could have gotten by saying that you've heard that before, that you're not open to learning. Whole idea of layered learning. So be mindful of that. But with engineers, I would say the three oldest engineering disciplines are civil engineering, mechanical engineering, and electrical engineering. And really all the other engineering majors and disciplines just came off of that. So for myself, my background's in chemical engineering. It came out of mechanical engineering. And then even for electrical engineering, computer engineering, software engineering kind of came out of that. For civil engineering, construction, environmental engineering came out. And then even like further breaking down, I'm not sure exactly, but I would think that biomedical or biological engineering kind of came out of chemical engineering, mainly because a lot of the different universities I'm at, and even my university has like chemical and biological engineering kind of merged together, sometimes with biomedical. And so I think those kind of came from it. But the whole idea, like I mentioned, in STEM as a whole, and definitely in engineering, is that engineers, we're problem solvers. We see a task that maybe has never been done, and then we have to figure out a way to solve it. And so, for the longest time in my career, it could have been seen that I was doing things that wasn't directly related to my major, because my major was chemical engineers, is a chemical engineer, so a lot of that goes into chemical reaction, chemical plants, become process engineer. And so a lot of my career has been spent in packaging and package engineer, which doesn't directly relate. But when you think about engineering as a whole, and even what you learn in school, is really understanding how to solve problems. And I think the 4 years, like, yes, you learn a lot of different things, a lot of different techniques, but I think the main thing I got out of school is understanding that things are not going to be laid out for you, that you're going to have to figure things out. And so in college, that happens sometimes. I still will say things are kind of laid out more. I think more junior and senior year, especially as you do your design projects, you get to think out and be more creative with your ideas. But that's something that I share with students or early career people as they're coming in, is that you may be solving problems that have never been solved before. Or if they had been solved, it was kind of a band-aid and it didn't work. And you are solving problems that no one actually knows the answer to. So it's a different mindset. So if you went to college, study engineering, study science, you have a problem that you're trying to solve on the test, there is a correct answer, and you better get that answer right, or hope that there's partial credit for knowing how to the steps you need to take. God knows partial credit saved me in college. Like, I think for a lot of people it did, but there were times I was like, yeah, I won't go too much into that, but partial credit definitely saved me. So I think just understanding that there is not just one right answer that you have to solve, and there's multiple answers and multiple correct answers, and you're trying to figure out what is the best solution. And keep in mind that as you go, depending if you go in the academic route, the industry route, all these different things, you may have limited amount of funding or time to work on different things. You have to manage stakeholders, which is just all the people that this is going to affect, whether it's the internal stakeholders like in your company. So like for me, working in R&D right now, internal stakeholders being like operations or quality, the people on the plant floor, operators, technicians, and external stakeholders like the companies that buy the product that we sell, and then really the end external, the consumer that's buying it. So all those things need to be taken account of. So I know I'm spending a little bit more time here on the engineering side because my background's in engineering. I could talk so much more about it, but I'll talk briefly about the math. And math, I won't talk a lot about just because I don't know as much about it, so I can't. But I think everyone's heard of math. There's this actuarial science, which I think goes into like insurance and a lot of things. And really, math being the foundation of cybersecurity and the codes, cybersecurity and how we're able to make things secure are really complex mathematical equations in our design. And so I don't know too much about it. I know that as we are in the world of artificial intelligence and technology and social media, all these things, that maintaining security is paramount. And so the math side of things, I would say if you're passionate about math, you love math. I would say I love math. I still love math. I got to a stage that I didn't like it as much when I got to differential equations and Laplace transforms. That just really, and it's funny because I think we're maybe depending on who you are, and I probably lost a lot of people when I'm talking about Laplace transforms. I think that's more so. I think that's used more so on the electro engineering side of things. But that was something that I was like, I don't know about this. But Calc 1 and 2, Calc 3, like those were fine. But when I got to differential equations, I was like, I don't know about this Laplace stuff. Anyway, follow your passion and continue to do it. And realize that STEM is not just for children, is not just for high school students, even college students. STEM really goes through with you through your career. So I would say this episode is, I guess it's for people who maybe didn't understand how STEM is broken down, as well as maybe you are in STEM, but maybe more so are heavy on the science side or technology side or math side or engineer side. You're all heavy on one of them and you want to learn more about it, have better conversations. And talk about better conversations. A key way to have a better conversation is to talk less. And I don't mean just sit there and not say anything, but focus on asking more questions. When you ask questions, you can learn and you can build on those questions. What you will realize, and it's been studied, that the topic that people like to talk the most about is themselves or something that they're really interested in. If you can get someone talking about themselves or some a passion that they have, you will continue to get them talking. And I've learned that as a podcaster. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. If you're thinking about doing a podcast and never done it before, and I guess if you're thinking about having guests, because not everyone has guests on their podcast or they have guests every now and then. But as you have guests on the show, is focus on asking them questions, but really being immersed in the conversation. And so I've been told this a few different times about my questions and how I come up with them. And they seem to be really thoughtful questions. I've told this about podcasts, but I've also been told this just in general, like in life. And with anything, it's a skill I developed from practice. Something that I was intentional about doing, asking questions. And also because I'm just a naturally curious person. As far as if you've ever done 5 strengths from Gallup, Strengths Finder, like one of my top strengths is learner. I love learning about new things, new ways of doing things, new ways to interact. And something I realized that there's always something to learn, there's always something to grow, always something new to see. So that's one thing. If you're thinking about podcasting, just focus on asking questions and focus on the other person. Also, you can, and it takes time. And honestly, I'm still developing in my skill as a podcaster. I go through the sometimes painful, it's gotten easier with time, but what am I trying to say? It's gotten easier in time to watch myself, listen to myself, because I know that's one of the first things people say, like, "Oh, I can't stand hearing my voice," and then it's like the funny thing is the voice that you can't stand hearing is the voice that everyone is hearing all the time, and there's this whole cognitive thing about how we hear our voices when we're talking versus how it actually sounds to other people. That's the voice people are hearing. And so being intentional about listening to yourself, watching your mannerisms, watching my hand gestures, watching my facial expressions if you're on YouTube. So if you're listening, thank you for listening as always. Please check out YouTube as well, trying to grow that. And if you're already on YouTube, thank you for watching. Also, make sure you listen to it as well. Do both. But wherever you are streaming this show from, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to spend time with me, learn more about STEM, learn more about my experiences, and yeah, just continue to learn. So I am going to be intentional and try to make the individual episodes myself a little bit shorter and even the podcast a little bit shorter. I think there is value from having longer episodes, but I think also having episodes that are about 30 minutes, similar to what they do on TV. I mean, I think there's a reason that they do that. So I'm going to take that model. I'm going to keep this episode shorter. I talked about STEM. If you have any topics that you want to see in the future, or even if you're interested in being on the podcast, reach out, let me know. We can make it happen. I will say I'm really intentional about who I have on the podcast as far as what topics we're talking about. If it's someone that's really strong in their leadership or in the STEM space, in the leadership space, as an entrepreneur. But I'm also playing around doing more, maybe, I guess the best way to think about it is like almost like a live coaching session. So I'm thinking about, is that something you'd be interested in watching or listening to? Kind of a live coaching session. Obviously, need their consent, but that's something I've been thinking about for a while, praying about what I want to do. But yeah, that's all I have. Just talk a little bit about STEM, what it is, how you can support it. I'll end with just talking about NALA STEM, trying to be more intentional about talking about it. The National Alliance Lead the Acceleration of STEM. And so what we do is unite, support, and build community among all underrepresented people or historically excluded peoples in STEM. So the work we do as a nonprofit is really crucial. We've partnered with LSAMP, Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation, which is a National Science Foundation grant. And we have some exciting things coming up in the future that we'll be sharing. And yeah, we continue to learn and grow and do new things. But hopefully this episode, you got to learn something that you maybe didn't know, or maybe a new perspective, or maybe you just wanted to hear me ramble, whatever it was. I would love to hear from you. Definitely leave a comment, leave a rating, and let's continue to be intentional, continue to keep moving so that we can keep being incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible. Incredible.